Thank you. It's a wonderful church. I feel really very well connected with you just being here in the short amount of time. I had an opportunity to speak to your youth earlier, and they're a really fun bunch, a really tight bunch, and I had a great time. I appreciate you allowing me to come and speak. My name is, nope, I guess I'm missing a page. Okay, so my name is Glenn Inn, as Pastor you mentioned. I am a deacon over at Onnuri Church, which is about a mile or so away over on Meridian Avenue. I met Pastor Yu about 5 or 6 years ago when he came by to see our after-school tutoring program. And I'd like to share with you my testimony about how God has brought me into serving on missions and ministry. I'm a third-generation Korean, and I understand from the people at my church that this is a rarity. They have never really met a third-generation Korean. To me, it's very natural, but everybody who's first 1.5 or second-generation Korean say it's very rare to run into third generation. I was born in 1961, and I've lived my entire life here in the Bay Area. Things were different when I was a child. There weren't that many Asians in society. In my elementary school, there were 300 children in the elementary school, and there were only 5 Asian students. And one of them was Korean, all the rest were non-Korean. So naturally, people just treated us differently, and there wasn't a lot of trust of Asians because at that time, we'd just gotten through with the World War II, with the Korean War, and then also the war in Vietnam. So relations with Asian people here were pretty stressful. Okay, there we go. So these are some pictures I decided so you can get to know me. The first picture is from 1966, and yes, indeed, it is black and white because in 1966 they didn't have color photographs. And that's me, and that is a new car in the garage. It's a station wagon, a Ford station wagon. That's the next picture in the middle is me when I was in about 3rd grade. And then that picture on the end is me after I was graduating from Stanford. So those of you who are looking to go to college, I can highly recommend Stanford. It's a good school. In elementary school, I was really bullied a lot. Kids would just beat me up for no reason other than I was different. It was hard to understand. I'd come home crying to mom and dad, and you know, they'd comfort me, but they couldn't do much either because they were living in the situation of you know, being Asian themselves. Society just really didn't understand the Asian people because of the times. But as I went through life and I got to college, things settled down. The discrimination became less and less. But you know, all that hurt from being bullied and beaten up, you know, caught in here and kind of just pushed deep down into the heart. After I graduated from Stanford, you know, if you walked up to me and said, "Glenn, you know what? You're going to go on a mission to Mexico," I'd have looked at you, smiled very politely, and then turned back and continued playing on my Pong video game and my Atari video console. For those of you old enough to know what Pong is, that was the original video game before all the games you have on your phone. No, wait a minute. Not only are you going to go to Mexico, but you're going to lead the mission to Mexico. You're going to lead missions to Myanmar, and then you know what? You're going to create a ministry for the Hispanic children around the church, which you don't even know you're going to go to yet. Now I would really have smiled nicely at you, picked up my TV and Atari, and walked over into the next room. I just would not have had any semblance to believe that was going to happen. But I can say that now, that God knew what was going to happen and that I didn't. Years later, I got married. My wife is first-generation Korean, and she brought me to her church, Onnuri, right over here. And being that token, that special third-generation Korean-American who could speak English, the education pastor came up to us and asked us to become the teachers for the English Sunday school. What do I know about teaching Sunday school? How, you know, me? But I can't say no. The pastor is asking me. God speaks through the pastor. If he asks me, I assume God is asking me. So my wife and I, we said yes, we would do it. And you know what? We ended up serving for 5 years teaching English Sunday school. It was a blast. The kids were fun. Midway, as we're teaching, and obviously people are seeing and recognizing, one of the church elders, he was putting together a mission to Mexico. And he knew he wanted to have a VBS program. And so he came over to my wife and me and asked us if we would go on the mission to Mexico and lead the VBS program. What do I know about leading VBS? I've never done this. I've never coordinated VBS. This is nuts. Why are you asking me? Why would Elder Frank come over and ask me? I have no experience. But again, since an elder in the church was asking, my wife and I, we said, okay, we'll go. And on that mission, God showed me how important it was that we go to Mexico. I began to see what God was seeing. He confirmed that importance. In fact, the next year when Elder Frank said that he couldn't go, but he asked me and my wife to lead the missions continually to Mexico. What do I know about leading a mission team? I'm just barely managing to do VBS, but once again, the elder asked, and it turns out we ended up leading the missions for another 3 years. And then after that, we ended up leading missions to Myanmar. So God was really starting to come to work here. So here, here's a picture of one of our missions from Mexico. This is a dental mission. I realize it may be hard to see, but there's a bunch of smiling faces there. You can see their white teeth smiling. In the earlier missions, as we were doing the VBS, we had seen that they really needed help. The children and even the parents had really poor teeth. I mean, rotten teeth, black rotten teeth. Some were so infected that if you touch them, they scream, and it's not like ow, it's like it was, but they just live with it. They didn't have the ability or the knowledge of how to take care of their teeth. And when I explained this to my brother, Dr. Mike, who's a dentist, he's in the middle section of blue shirts, he's the next one on the end, the man on the end. God convicted him that I want to go and help these children and these families. So not only did he volunteer to go be the dentist, but he also needed some help, some assistance. So he trained 2 of our youth to be dental assistants. He taught them how to use the instruments, how to prepare the syringes with the Novocaine. And in fact, his gift, as I found out, I didn't know this until we went to Mexico, was that he's a very good teacher. So good, in fact, that he convinced my daughter, who is now graduating from UOP, to become a dentist. There's more to this. This was a very deep mission, and I could go along more about this, but in the sake of time, we'll talk about more about this later, another time. At some point, the church asked me to become a deacon, and I went through the ordination process. And then right afterwards, they asked me and another elder, Elder David, to create a program for the youth, or for the community, because they wanted to be attached to the community, just like what Pastor Justin wanted to do. We had no idea what we were going to do. So what program? What are we going to do? So Elder David and I, we prayed about what it is, and God showed us. He showed us that in our neighborhood, there were many Hispanic families whose children were struggling in school. So we created what we called the La Vida Niños after-school training program, or tutoring program. We didn't really know what to do at the start, so we just did what we thought made sense, and we prayed to God. And as we went along the way, God showed us what are the things that we needed to provide to the children. And most importantly, we were fortunate that we had faithful volunteers in our church who would serve on the program, and they would do whatever was needed. In our program, we typically have about 24 children that attend, and it takes about 35 volunteers within the church in order to make that program run smoothly. So I can say in complete faith that God will provide for those who faithfully serve. If you're called to serve and you're worried, how can I do it? God will give you the wisdom, and he will give you the resources needed, but you just have to be faithful to him. So whether it's the suffering in the children, and we have the tutoring for them, or in this case, the youth of the Myanmar whose school system is so primitive, their classrooms are dark, dingy. The education level is probably no better than maybe 8th grade here, if that much. And then the families in Mexico who are poor and live in conditions where medicine is not readily available. All these things God showed me, and now he's telling me, go and serve on these ministries and missions. And when I served there, I began to learn things about myself. He showed me the intent for my life, which was provide a voice to those who are disenfranchised, to be the voice for those who have been separated. The bullying that I had when I was growing up, The bullying that I didn't understand, the pain and suffering that I endured, now is clear. I know what it's like to suffer and be isolated, and now God has put me in a position to speak for those who have been disenfranchised and are in a similar situation. So let me close with this. About 9 years ago, we had a visit from a guest pastor from Seoul who ran an orphanage, and he brought over 18 of his children, ages from 6 years old to 18 years old, and they were going to do a musical variety show for our church. What I didn't know was that musical variety show was going to change my life. Each child played 4 instruments. 4. Every child played 4 instruments. And it wasn't like the little 6-year-old playing and doing kind of nice. Each child played each instrument as if they were an adult musician. It's like nothing I had ever seen. Not only did they play music, they danced, they did taekwondo, all like adults. It was just awesome to see. Nothing you've ever seen before. And midway in that show, I was sitting 1/3 of the way back on the right side of the church, and I realized at that point my body was paralyzed. I could not move. And then all of a sudden the tears started coming down my eyes. And God spoke to me at that moment, and this is what he said to me. He said, "Glenn, you see those children up there? They had nothing. Their parents threw them out onto the streets. Your parents loved you. They gave you and your brothers a home and good educations. But see what I can do by faith alone. Share your gifts." The next thing I know, the house lights are coming up. I'm sitting in that pew, and my whole body is shaking. I couldn't stand up for 2 or 3 minutes. I just was so shaking. And when I stood up, I was actually very wobbly. And that message that God gave to me now is very clear. He had showered my life through my parents' love, through giving me the endurance to last through all that bullying, so that I would know the pain of others who were being unjustly treated. Had I not faithfully served on these ministries and missions, I don't think that I would have known God's heart and also known the reason for my suffering. So I pray for each of you in this church that you'll have this opportunity to know God's love in an intimate way and to have that intent, to know his intent for what he wants out of each of you, for each of you. Because I can honestly say that serving in ministry and missions brought me close to God, and that was essential for me to know what his intentions were for my life. May you and your church be blessed in your ministry efforts. Thank you.